everyone, it's Mary. I tried to do something with the lighting to see if it works because today is very gloomy outside. I think it's raining, it's very grey, and I hope this has enough lighting. And I'm feeling very festive because we're in December, so I'm wearing my very festive jumper and I have fairy lights on. I put them on the bookshelf and it looks so pretty. I love Christmas, as you might have guessed. And today I'm sharing with you my November wrap-up. November was a weird month for me this year because I felt like it lasted forever. I don't know if anybody else got the same feeling. I felt like I didn't read for a long period of time, but I also felt like I read quite a lot of books, I mean, for my average. So I don't know what happened. Time just stretched during November this year. It was a very exciting month because it was nonfiction November, and I'm going to leave a link to all the information about nonfiction November down below. I have participated in nonfiction November, although I didn't take into consideration the prompts that were given. So I just read whatever nonfiction I felt like reading that I already owned. Let's start with the only fiction book that I finished in the month of November, which was An Uncommon Education by Elizabeth Percer. And I started this book back in October and wanted to finish it before getting into nonfiction November. I gave it 3 stars. It was okay. I thought it was going to be more than that. This talks about Naomi, and it really begins with her as a child, and we explore her childhood and her very peculiar relationship with a neighbor of hers, and also the relationship between her and her parents. So it starts like a family story, and then it goes on to college. She wants to become a doctor and she enters Wellesley. Then she gets in contact with people, something that she didn't really do growing up because of her being weird, or well, antisocial, really, very reserved, and just she didn't grow up with friends basically. But she starts going to this college and enters a mysterious society that is called the Shakespeare Society, and it has its rituals, they do plays and stuff. The first half of the book that talked about her childhood was very interesting, and I was very much immersed into it, and I really enjoyed the writing style. But then I felt like the second part of the book fell flat for me and it was not as engaging. I don't know, something about the Shakespeare Society didn't really appeal to me. I was not very interested. I don't think the characters there were very well developed, and I thought it had a lot of potential because it was very interesting. The relationships that she built with her family and her friend were extremely relevant and very compelling, but I don't know what happened. I still am weirdly fond of this book just because I felt very close to the main character in the first part. Usually I think 3-star books are the ones that I hardly keep, but this one I want to keep and maybe revisit it in the future. Onto the nonfiction books that I completed. I have Walden, or Life in Woods, and I should not put this book up because I'm just going to put a picture here of the original English version. I read it in Italian. I owned this book since university, and it was about time that I got to it. I thought it was just the perfect period of time to read this, in kind of autumn getting into winter, and it talks about nature really. And I talked about this book, I think, quite a lot on this channel on previous videos, but it's basically the story of the author Henry David Thoreau that decides to just live in the woods near the lake of Walden for 2 years. And here it talks about his experience doing that, how he coped with being in the wilderness, kind of, because it was kind of near the society actually, and his reflections on society. And I just thought that the first part of the book was very, very good. It had, I mean, it could be pretentious at times, but it was okay. I was not bothered by it. I was not annoyed by him by any means. And I think some of his reflections were actually so important for us as well, living in 2017. I thought, wow, this dude just got it right, and it was the 19th century, and I wouldn't say blown away by it, but just very surprised that some things just really didn't change. But then he started talking about him and his feelings and his reflections on nature, and it was just not engaging at all, and I just didn't care less. Also, the fact that he sees some things very conveniently, like, you know, hunting is a rough business, so let's just eat rice for the rest of my life, because human beings are adaptable and we can eat rice and just be fine, which, I mean, it's true somehow, but of course you did that. You lived there for 2 years, and he was going to the town that was nearest him a lot of times and just spent nights there drinking with people, and also took his laundry to the town. And I was like, what's the point of you just living in the wilderness if you're not getting the full experience? But I mean, I get it. It was interesting anyway, and I'm glad I read it. And then I read Running with Scissors by Augusten Burroughs. And this is a memoir of the author that actually uses a pseudonym. I've seen interviews with him just to, you know, get to know him more, and boy, he had a crazy life. This talks about him growing up, mostly with his mother, but with his parents, and how toxic relationships really were in his household, and how his mother slowly lost her mind, really, and started seeing a psychiatrist, and he basically started living at the psychiatrist's house and with the doctor's family, which was bonkers, and it just really didn't make things better. There is, you know, abuse, there is drugs, there is violence. It's just kind of a wild ride, and I couldn't actually really connect with him that well, just because I couldn't wrap myself around the fact that all of this was real. It's not that I didn't enjoy it. It was a weird story. Something really didn't click that well, and it was not even, you know, the bittersweet kind of funny thing that really gets to your heart. It was just, I was very detached from it until the very end, in which I really felt for him. For a little bit, I was like, oh, poor guy, you really had a tough life. And I don't know, it was not good, it was not bad, but my main problem with it was that I couldn't fully believe what was happening. So I don't know, that's probably only my problem. But yeah, if you're interested in getting to know this author's life, then definitely check it out, I guess. And then I read Iran Awakening by Shirin Ebadi. And as I said before, after reading Persepolis, I really was interested into knowing more about Iran and its history, because I don't know anything about it, basically. I just felt like Persepolis just scratched the surface, and I just wanted to, you know, to know more. So I picked up this book that is by a Nobel Prize winner, and it is an account on her life and her experience as a judge, and how she was demoted after the Islamic Revolution in 1979. It really talks about women in Iran, how things really changed. It talks about politics, and sometimes it went a little bit over my head, I have to admit. There was a lot of new information that was being digested by me, and it being a very short book just didn't really work that well, because I think it's entirely my problem, but I couldn't remember things, and when I get a lot of information, I just get lost. So I felt like maybe if this one was a little bit longer or just less specific, it would have worked way better than that. But another thing, I give it 3 stars. So it's not that I did not enjoy it, it was very interesting. I wanted to, you know, to know her story. That was very fascinating, and I actually have to say that after reading it, I kind of feel like I know a little bit more about Iran, so it was definitely an interesting read, but I didn't really enjoy the writing style that much. I don't know if it is the translation or just her writing style in general that was not that captivating, but just didn't work for me. So 3 stars for this one. Definitely an interesting read, but not the best. And then we jump from 3-star reads to 5-star reads, and I have 2 this month. So firstly I have Good night stories for rebel girls, and I have this book in Italian. Again, I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot, but maybe you didn't see my other videos, so it's all good. But this was written by Elena Favilli and Francesca Cavalli. They are both Italian, and this book was originally written in English though, because they live in the US, and this was published through crowdfunding. But I have the Italian version, which was not even translated by them. I think it's weird, but anyway. This is a kind of a short story collection for children, I guess, and it talks about 100 women that were or are relevant in our history. So it has beautiful illustrations inside that were made by different artists, all women, again, and it's structured this way. So you have the story, which is a page long, and then the illustration beside, and they're beautiful. It's just, this book was gorgeous. I loved it. I was in a very emotional state while reading it, but I might have shed some tears reading it, just because I was so proud. I didn't know about the lives of many of the women inside this book, so I think it's a relevant book both for adults and children, and just the perfect Christmas gift. It was just amazing, and I gave it 5 stars. The last book that I'm going to talk about is Chernobyl Prayer by Svetlana Alexievich. She is from Belarus, and this was translated by Anna Gunin and Arch Tate. This book was terrible, and I hated it. That's why I gave it 5 stars. I cannot say that I loved this book. I think this is a must read for everyone. I did know some things about Chernobyl, because when it happened, I mean, I was born a few years after the Chernobyl disaster, but you know, people in Italy really talked a lot about it, and we had a lot of Belarusians, is that the right word? Children that went to Italy in the summer, for example. I used to live near the seaside, so we kind of got in contact with them in this way, in a very, you know, brief way, and our parents just explained to us briefly what was that all about. But I didn't know a lot of things in detail, and I must say that I had forgotten about it. It's just something that I stopped thinking about, and that shouldn't happen, because it is still a tragedy that is ongoing in Belarus, and how really deeply it affected people, and how this nation is basically dying, and we're doing nothing to help them. So this book was very, very powerful, and especially the first story and the last, I thought that wrapped the whole thing up just perfectly, because the first story that you get into is just a punch in the stomach, and it's so harsh that I really started reading this book and I was already crying, and I was 10 pages in. Then it gets kind of better, I would say, but I had to physically stop reading this some time because it was just too much. The format in which is written, she basically interviewed people that had to do with the tragedy, maybe firsthand or just secondhand, you know, as time goes by, and how people are still affected by it. But some interviews were just singular, so with a single person speaking, and then sometimes we had collective interviews in which she would just list all the names before getting into the interview, and then you would have just chunks of conversation all together. And at first I didn't quite liked this format because I thought it was confusing, but then I got used to it, and actually it made sense, because that's the way that she wanted to present the situation to you, as just everybody talking, maybe sometimes at the same time, maybe overlapping each other, and it didn't really matter who said what in that particular case, of course, because sometimes it's important to tell people apart, you know. But just as a collective, I thought it worked really well. And the last story just really wrapped up the book in the right way, and it really left me wrecked. It was just very demanding emotionally, this book. It is very easy to go through, but sometimes it was like, wait. It was like a shower of of thoughts and feelings. It was just like repeatedly banging your head against a wall, and it was painful, really. But I think this book is absolutely a must read, and I just couldn't recommend this enough. And also, I did not mention that I read this book for the Read Around the World book club that is hosted by Mel over at Mel's Bookland Adventures. I'm just going to leave a link down below, and I really thank the group for choosing this book and for discussing it, because we had quite a emotional discussion about it as well. So yes, this was the last book, so a very sad note to end my video to. I also wanted to mention that I had started reading, I actually DNF'd, but I DNF'd this book in December, so I'm just going to talk about this book in my December wrap-up. But it was another book for a book club that is hosted by Yamini over at the Skeptical Reader, and the book club is Tales & Co, and I'm just going to leave links to all that I say down below. But it was The Unit by Ninni Holmqvist. Didn't really like this one, but I'm just going to talk about it in my December wrap-up. This was it for my November wrap-up. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope the lighting wasn't too bad. I'm just going to find out while editing, I guess. And please let me know if you read any of the books that I mentioned, what you thought of them, and as always, I will see you in my next video. Bye!